Right, a very good evening and welcome to Africa and Beyond Television Network. There are certain things which we need to take a look right now at this point in time, and hope and believe that we are going to have a fruitful discussion right here. So today I want to talk about the new vice president who has replaced Chiwenga and Mohadi effectively. And this has happened under our watch. This has happened as we are speaking right now. We now have a new vice president operating in the nation of Zimbabwe, but he's operating from the background. And you need to understand these very important issues. So for Zimbabwe to prosper, we need to have a serious conversation about the future. We need to have a serious conversation about the issues or the involvement of people like Wicknell, Chivhayo in the daily running of a business, of government business. So let us start by bringing in the issue of what is called an executive. A country, we does have what is called an executive, then we have what is called a cabinet, and it goes down to the legislature. Right now in Zimbabwe, the executive is led by Mnangagwa and deputized by Constantino Chiwenga and Mohadi. These are the people who are deputizing Mnangagwa. But these two gentlemen have been effectively replaced and neutralized by Wicknell Chivhayo. And I'm going to explain the reason why Wicknell Chivhayo is now in charge. Right now, let us start by understanding what does the executive mean. So we have the executive. These are people who are empowered to implement legislation, to develop and implement policy, to direct and to coordinate the work of the government departments, to prepare and initiate legislation and perform other functions as called by the constitution or legislation. This is the function of the executive, which means President Mnangagwa, Vice President Chiwenga, Vice President Mohadi. These are three key people who are part of the executive, and make sure that they exercise their authority and functions as the executive. They are assisted by the ministers who form cabinet. So right here in Zimbabwe, VP Chiwenga is no longer effectively implementing any legislation. Mohadi is no longer effectively implementing any legislation. They are no longer effectively developing and implementing any policy. They are no longer directing and coordinating the work of the government departments. I'm going to explain. Let us start by the issue of Starlink. When Starlink came, it was an issue of Minister of Information and the Minister of ICT. These are the two ministers who are supposed to work together, coordinating each other to make sure that Starlink is licensed in Zimbabwe, particularly under Potras, which falls under the Ministry of Information, and also the Ministry of ICT. These are the two key ministries which are supposed to be taking a look on the issue of licensing, which means they were supposed to develop and implement a policy which was going to guide Potras, which was going to guide Starlink to operate right here in Zimbabwe through the use of Potras. What is happening at this point in time is we had just an announcement that Starlink is going to be licensed in Zimbabwe, or has been licensed in Zimbabwe to operate in Zimbabwe under a sole company, known as IMC. Where did this company come from? It's a briefcase company of Wicknell Chivhayo. Wicknell Chivhayo, who is controversially connected to President Mnangagwa and who does have audios which have been leaked so far, which are linking corrupt deals to President Mnangagwa's office directly. What does it mean? It means Wicknell Chivhayo is running a background executive role, replacing Mohadi, replacing Constantino Chiwenga. If you go to the government departments like the ministries, it's Chivhayo who now decides who gets which contract. It's now Chivhayo who decides who gets which tender. Those are the issues which are supposed to be done and monitored by the executive through the vice presidents, development, but they are no longer there. they no longer direct and coordinate the work of the government departments. They are no longer in charge. Somebody else is now in charge. Go to the Gwanda Solar Project. Gwanda Solar Project is a true testimony, number one, of state capture, number two, of lack of power of the executive. They are no longer in charge. Why? These are people who are supposed to make sure that, okay, we need development to happen in Zimbabwe. For development to happen, we need power. And for power to happen, we need to make sure that the Ministry of Energy or the Ministry of Power is actually functioning to the last. What happened is that we had a man called Fortune Chasi, who was once a Minister of Energy. Fortune Chasi was removed from that ministry because, number one, he was pursuing Wicknell Chivhayo's deal of Gwanda Solar Project. Number two, he was trying by all means possible to make the conditions at Wange and at Kariba be resolved. That didn't happen. So right now, you see that somebody will get a tender, will sit on that tender, and Chiwenga will come and will try to ask, why is it that we don't have electricity? Contract in mwana wa chef. What are you going to do? Kempo Mohadi will come and say, we need to initiate a legislation. Yakabva ku parliament ikapasa. Let us initiate it. Let us implement it. Which means this is going to be an operation of phone calls. Nobody is going to touch Wicknell Chivhayo at this point in time, given that he has confessed being MNANGAGWA's blue-eyed boy. So touching this guy, Anonzi Chivhayo, will be a direct attack on MNANGAGWA. That is a clear indication that we now have a de facto vice president operating in the shadows at the expense of everybody. He's just giving directives. Tenda inoenda kuna Chimombe, tenda inoenda kuna Mpofu, tenda inoenda kuna anonzani uyu kuna Scott, tenda tunekanda kuna Sulu, tenda inoenda kuna Ningi. This is how they are operating at this point in time. So Zimbabwe is operating in an illegality, in a situation where illegal things are happening. VP Chiwenga is no longer in charge. Kempo Mohadi is no longer in charge. In fact, Kempo Mohadi looks fragile, ill, and tired. And Chivhayo is there. Pamamunya ipapo. Where you don't expect to see Chivhayo, where you expect to see Vice President Chiwenga, you will see Chivhayo. Pamamunya ipapo, ba. Chigunduru. Manwa ED. Pama. Those are no game race tambika. So this is the kind of nation we now have, which is number one, a dictatorship. Number two, is now a country without the executive, which is functional. We now have a de facto background executive operating. So you have to understand these things for you to be able to understand good. If Wicknell Chivhayo is still in charge, there is nothing which is going to come out of the Ministry of Sports which is going to be functional, which is going to be tangible. Go to ZEC. It's Wicknell Chivhayo who is running a tender, 40 million plus tender at ZEC. Go to Judiciary Service. There is a possibility that Wicknell Chivhayo is running there. Go to each and every department. Wicknell Chivhayo, police, Wicknell Chivhayo is there. Everywhere. He mentioned it in an audio. We have never seen the authorities taking a look and taking a step in making sure that they deal with this issue. We have not seen a statement from the government to distance itself from what Chivhayo said. Which means the law of tenders in Zimbabwe has been decimated left, right, and center. And the law of tenders has been captured. We are no longer going about a tender, we are now going about individuals. And it's there. It's there and it's clear. So you can actually see that this is game 2028, 2030, where we now have sitting vice president and sitting cabinet ministers neutralized by one man who is now running a de facto show as the vice president and as the minister. Because when you are running everything, you are now the minister. You are now the vice president. So this is where we are going as Zimbabwe. Nothing is going to move. Because Chivhayo said, mdara anoti kana akubuda, anoti mwanangu nda akubuda, chisara uchidai nekudai. That is an instruction which is being given to Chivhayo, which is not related to tenders, but which is related to some other things which he is left to oversee on his own. Which means he is being left in charge of certain things and certain operations. You will be thinking, Kembo Mohadi is the vice president, Kembo Mohadi is in charge. While least we have Wicknell Chivhayo running ministries as a de facto vice president. He confessed himself kuti ndinonzi namdara sara uchidai nekudai. Kana vasvika mdara vanondifonera mwana wangu ndasvika. Which means he will be getting briefs and updates from Wicknell Chivhayo directly. Which means Wicknell Chivhayo is now attached to each and every ministry in Zimbabwe. There is no other explanation which goes above this one. Wicknell Chivhayo is now attached to each and every ministry in Zimbabwe. Be it to finance, be it to energy, communications, everywhere, Chivhayo is there. Because he is the one who is given an instruction. According to the order of the executive, when the president is going out, he leaves power in the acting capacity to a certain vice president or a minister in the absence of the vice president. Then, when he is doing anything, they consult each other with the minister in charge or with the vice president who is acting as the president. Not Chivhayo. But when you see things, mfano wangu urukona ndapedza nevakomana ava ini ndakuchienda manje saka chisara uchiona kuti zvinhu zvakamira sei uchindipa ma-updates vasvika vobva vafona mfano wangu chimbondiudza zviri kufamba sei kuri sei. Why is this happening? People like vana Wicknell Chivhayo, these are risk takers. Yes, these are risk takers who make money from out of thin air. So they will simply take a risk, do their things, and make money. This is what they do. So this is the problem we now have in Zimbabwe, where we have officials sworn in vice presidents being overpowered by an elected, number one, unelected, number two, a man who has never been sworn in, who has now become a de facto power in the executive there. Which means it's just that he doesn't sit in cabinet, but he's running everything. So when you go to discuss things in cabinet, you are simply discussing nothing, because whatever you discuss is not going to be implemented. Somebody, the blue-eyed boy, will come to each and every ministry and say, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that, do that, do that, do that. Those are the two that. And everybody will have to comply. So this is a very bad precedent set in Zimbabwe. And it's time for the people of Zimbabwe to have this conversation and say, what do we do? Yes, we have to ask each other, what do we do now? Once we are able to ask ourselves, what do we do now? Then we are in a capacity to actually launch and make sure that we deal with this illegality. This is completely 100% illegal. 100% illegal, which is happening in Zimbabwe. And it's time for the people of Zimbabwe to make sure that they determine their future, they decide their future. It's time for us as Zimbabweans to determine our future, to decide our future by making sure that we neutralize this de facto vice president called Wicknell Chivhayo. We cannot continue like this, Team Zimbabwe. We cannot continue like this. Let us have a moment where things are going to be done in the right way. We cannot have Wicknell Chivhayo confessing publicly and no consequences, no investigation whatsoever from President Mnangagwa and his team. He doesn't even distance himself from those things. We don't even hear the authorities say, we are investigating these allegations to see if they are true. There is no effort, because everybody knows that what was said is the truth And that is the reason why we are where we are. Imagine talking about 2 million just going out into some person's pocket without doing anything. Talking about 100,000 just being paid to somebody who is going to pay $1,000 kuna girlfriend A, girlfriend B, 10 ma girlfriend vanenge vanayo maslay queen ari kutinetsa muHarare aya. Being given allowances of 1,000. Just imagine kuti vanenge vachichinjaniswa nemaslay queen aya vanenge vari 10 ipapo. This is the reason why these slay queens are driving nice cars, very expensive cars, because they are making money, milking money. Just imagine kuti mukadzi anopiwa 5,000 yekungoti hapana chaitwa. Just imagine kuti a worker who is a civil servant is spending years, from your prime years in your 20s up to your 60s, serving in the government of Zimbabwe as a civil servant, only to get a pension which does not even reach $1,000. But umwe munhu ari kuwana pension every month. Wicknell Chivhayo said it in his own words, ndo pension yacho vakomana. Which means these guys are on pension, they've never worked anyway, they are on pension. You are the donkeys who are going to do all the dirty jobs, and what are you getting? So it's time for us to reflect. It's time for us to tell the truth, to say we can't continue. As a nation, we cannot continue like this. We cannot continue to tolerate this as if this is something which is normal. This is not normal. We must have that conversation as a people to say, this is normal. The things which are happening are no longer normal. The executive, it no longer have its responsibility. It no longer have its power. They are now powerless. So, if you take a look on the 7 powers of the executive, you can actually see that they no longer apply. Vice President Chiwenga and Vice President Mohadi are now just placeholders. A placeholder does not do anything. You are simply there to be replaced. You are simply holding and warming up a position for somebody. And in the background, yes, sir, yes, boss. This is the reason why everybody is calling Victor. This is the reason why everybody is trying to impress Wicknell Chivhayo kuti go and see Victor. So I respect some people like Baba Harare who said, I will never take a vehicle from say Wicknell Chivhayo. Kuti ndaitei. I respect that man for those words kuti ndichiti ndaitei. You cannot simply get a call and say, go and see Victor, and you go to see Victor. Why tay? Ask yourself that question. What have you done which is giving you this kind of a reward? What extraordinary thing have you done which surpasses everybody else, which has never been done by any other person? So, this is it. This is the reason why as Zimbabwe we need to make sure that we fight together. We need to fight together because we cannot continue like this. This is the real time for us to have change in the nation of Zimbabwe, and it's time for these people to go, and they must go now. So you would see that one-on-one, we do not care about the propaganda you as NPF people spread. We do not care about how you try to defend each other. We are talking about serious matters right here. We are talking about the future of Zimbabwe here. We are talking about a position where Zimbabwe is being sold by just a few people who have captured the government. There is a state capture right now in Zimbabwe. I'm telling you this. So it is what it is, Team Zimbabwe. We now have Wicknell Chivhayo as the new vice president who has effectively replaced the Chiwenga and Mohadi. He is now calling shots in the ministries. He is now calling shots in the executive. And this remains a fact. That audio from Wicknell Chivhayo, it confirms that Zimbabwe is now fully captured, and there is nothing these people, these two gentlemen and all these ministers will do except driving my Land Cruiser except driving my Land Cruiser. There is nothing these people are there in government to do. So it is what it is. The choice is yours as Zimbabweans to continue with this system or to have a conversation and make sure that we have change in the nation of Zimbabwe in our lifetime.